Alright legends, today's video is inspired by something I stumbled across recently that completely derailed my brain for a bit. I was reading an article about brewers who forage ingredients from the wild to make beer. Not locally sourced, not organic, not artisan. I'm talking about brewers that literally wander into the forest, fields and hedgerows picking things themselves. Leaves, flowers, tree bark, mushrooms, seaweed, and putting that in beer.
It's Monday, don't groan, don't fear. The Beard and Beer blog bloke is here. Talking nonsense, beard on show. Grab a brew and watch him go.
Now, when I first read that, my initial reaction was, right, this is either genius or absolute craft beer bollocks. And honestly, the more I looked into it, the more fascinating it became. Because once you strip away the novelty, it actually touches on something pretty fundamental about craft beer. What does it actually mean to be local? So today we're going to dig into why brewers are doing this, what ingredients they're using, whether it actually tastes good, and whether this might be the most interesting direction craft beer could go. So first off, what exactly is a foraging brewer? Because it's not just throwing a handful of blackberries into a sour and calling it rustic, is it? These brewers are building entire recipes around ingredients they collect themselves from the environment around the brewery. And in some cases, they're collecting dozens of different plants. One brewery that was mentioned in this article is Scratch Brewing Company, and their whole philosophy is based on using ingredients found in the forests around them. And when I say ingredients, I mean things that would never normally cross your mind as brewing ingredients. Tree bark, leaves, wild mushrooms, flowers, roots. Imagine building a beer recipe like a chef wandering through a woodland pantry. And here's a key thing that makes this idea really interesting to me. These beers can only exist in that exact place. Not in the same country, not in the same region, in that exact environment. Now, this brings us to a concept that beer has always struggled with. Terroir. Is that how you say that? Because I wrote it down, but I don't know what it means. But wine people love this word anyway. Terroir basically means the environment influences the flavour of the final product. So the soil, the climate, the local plants, all of that becomes part of the flavour profile. Wine has this in abundance. Beer historically doesn't. Why is this? Because breweries usually buy ingredients from the same global suppliers. The same hops, the same malt, the same yeast strains. Which means two breweries thousands of miles apart can make beer that tastes very, very similar. Foraging flips that completely. Now suddenly your beer contains things that only grow within walking distance of that particular brewery. And that idea, a beer that tastes like a specific landscape, is incredibly compelling to me. It's basically brewing as geography. Now here is when things get properly weird. Because the ingredients breweries are using are genuinely wild. We're talking dandelions, elderberries, sassafras leaves, spruce tips, mushrooms, wild herbs, and even tree sap. One brewery in this article even brewed beers using multiple parts of a single tree. Leaves for aroma, bark for bitterness, sap for sweetness, which sounds absolutely mental, but also kind of brilliant. And some brewers are essentially creating liquid botany experiments. Each batch becomes a snapshot of whatever was growing at that exact moment of time. But here's the twist. This whole wild ingredient beer trend isn't actually new. It's ancient. Before hops became the standard in flavouring of beer, brewers used herbal blends called gruit. These mixtures included many things like yarrow, mugwort, heather, and juniper. And in fact, you can still buy a heather ale from Williams Brothers, which is fab. And of course, depending on where you were in Europe, the ingredients changed dramatically. So in many ways, these brewers aren't inventing something new. They're rediscovering something that we lost when beer became industrialised. There are a few big reasons why brewers are experimenting with this. First is escaping the IPA treadmill. Let's be honest, craft beer has been stuck in a loop. IPA, double IPA, triple IPA, hazy IPA, different labels, very similar experiences. Foraged ingredients break that pattern completely. The second reason, creating something genuinely local is cool. Not just locally brewed, but impossible to recreate anywhere else. And the third reason, reconnecting brewing with nature. Instead of sitting in a lab tweaking hop ratios, brewers go outside. They taste leaves, they smell the flowers, they explore landscapes. Brewing becomes part science and part exploration. Now, obviously, this approach comes with some serious problems. Ingredients are seasonal. Some flowers only bloom for about 2 weeks. Some berries ripen for 10 days. Miss that window and you're waiting for an entire year for your ingredients. And then there's the quality problem. You might need huge amounts of plant material to flavour a batch of beer, which means harvesting by hand, processing by hand, experimenting constantly. This is not efficient brewing, it's obsessive brewing. So, will forage beer take over craft brewing? Probably not. It's far too niche, too seasonal, too labour intensive. But that's not the point. The point is that these brewers are reminding us that beer doesn't have to be predictable. It can be tied to landscapes, to seasons, to places. And honestly, that is one of the coolest ideas brewing has produced in years. If you've ever tried a beer made with foraged ingredients, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into one of the stranger corners of craft brewing, give the video a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!